This is something that's a very important topic to me. The ferrule fittings on a rod and how that contributes to how the rod works and whether or not the rod stays together and someone has a good experience on the water with it. So right now you'll see that I'm wearing these rubber palm gloves from Ace Hardware. These are very inexpensive. They're probably $5 to $8, but they're a critical piece of equipment in my fishing kit when it comes to being able to effectively have the rods have good ferrule fittings, because they're put together very firmly and you can take them apart easily, because when you have the rubber palm grips, your grip is like that of an orangutan. You are far stronger and have far better grip, and you can both seat the ferrules and pop them apart much easier when you're wearing rubber, inexpensive gloves. If you add a pair of rubber gloves to your fishing kit where you might be putting your waders on and putting your rods together and taking them apart, you are always going to be able to get your rods apart at the end of the day, and you're going to be able to seat them firmly. When it comes to seating rod ferrule sections, my preference is to slide them together with a slight offset. So here I'm about maybe 30 degrees offset. You'll see where these two alignment dots are. My ferrule fitting strategy, and this isn't mine, this is an established thing, is to create a kind of scratch pattern where you slide the ferrule under tension around to the square fitting. So I'm gonna push the ferrule down until I get pretty good tension here while it's offset 30 degrees. And then under heavier friction, I'm going to bring it around to square. So now this ferrule is fit very tight. It's unlikely to come apart at any time during the fishing session. And if I wasn't wearing the gloves, this might be pretty hard for me to get apart, but because I'm wearing the gloves, that's going to pop right apart for me. Another topic I want to hit on here is the use of ferrule wax. I am not a proponent of ferrule wax. I actually think that ferrule wax rarely does anything to benefit a carbon rod. Ferrule wax, when you have the metal ferrule fittings on a bamboo rod, sometimes ferrule wax is necessary there. But when you have a carbon rod, the friction that holds the ferrule fitting together mostly comes from the porous surface that's on the inside of the female ferrule fitting. So when that rod, when the rod section is made and a piece of carbon is rolled around a metal mandrel and then popped off, the surface on the inside of the carbon has a higher degree of porosity. It's kind of the rough, natural finish of the carbon, and it's not the smooth outside that you see. And it's not the smooth outside that the male end will have. So having that friction on the inside that creates the friction that holds the male end, that is why the ferrules work on a tip over butt type carbon rod ferrule system. So if you put a wax or any sort of lubricant on the male end of your ferrule, what that does when you put your ferrule together is it fills in the little microscopic pores on the carbon on the inside of the female end, and it eliminates your ability to create that friction under the tension of just the force of what the inside and outside are pressing against themselves. So that's my advice. If you use the gloves and you don't use any sort of extra wax or lubricant, you are likely to have firm ferrule fittings that will stay together the whole time you're on the water, not come apart for you. You'll pop them off at the end with the gloves. And keep in mind, the tighter your ferrules are fit together, the higher performance your rod is going to be. The closer your rod comes to having the performance of a one-piece rod and having smooth energy transfers, and also sensitivity. And when your rod is bending here at a transition point of a ferrule, if you don't have that ferrule fully seated down there, you don't have a full energy transition and the full strength of what those materials are intended to do, because the design is intended to be pressed down firmly.